Okay. What I'd like to do is break this up into 3 areas. First of all, I want to get to know each other a little bit more. Then I want to get to know a little bit of the history of the Pennsylvania Constitution. And then I want to get into the details, the gory details of what's inside the Constitution. And you got to brace yourself for a lot of that. Does that sound good?
Yes. Yeah.
Good. Let's start off at the top. How many of you are Pennsylvania residents? All of us, except one. That's close enough. How many of you learned the Pennsylvania Constitution in school? Oh, all of a sudden it got real quiet in here. We got one. One out of, what, over a dozen of us here. I didn't learn it either. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that would happen? Here we are in Pennsylvania. The teachers, well, Pennsylvania runs the school system. They decide who can teach, who can't teach, what gets taught, what doesn't get taught, what certifications you need, how many days you got to be in school, all these different things. Why don't they teach the Pennsylvania Constitution? What are they afraid of? Now, how many of you have read the Constitution? Well, we got 3 of you. So there you go. That's better. Do you know, when I was, first time I ran for state rep, 1994, my first debate was the local civic association. And I just said to my opponents, I had Republican, Democrat, Independent. I said, have you read this? The one guy, an ex-admiral in the Navy, was like, I never read it. This guy's serving the country. The Democrats like, I have not. The Republican said, well, I skimmed it. You're swearing an oath to uphold this. What if it says that you're giving up your firstborn or something like that? They didn't even know. I'm telling you. It's a way to catch up. If you're ever in a debate, it's a way to catch up with your competition. Get them really a little bit rattled right from the very beginning. I never read the Constitution. I've never learned it. First time I read it, I was in my 30s. I didn't even know we had a Constitution. Who knew we had a Constitution? We're getting now, we're almost half of the people now we know we have a Constitution. Most people you talk to, they don't know. When I was running for governor, one of my greatest achievements is I got into all the schools. Schools are great because you can work those young minds. And I asked the same question. How many of you read the Pennsylvania Constitution? Crickets. Crickets are the only ones who read the thing. And I made teachers go beyond that. Go beyond that. So what is it they don't want you to know? Let me save that for a minute. Instead, let's look at some of the history of the Pennsylvania Constitution. Pennsylvania itself used to be just wild land. Indians, bears, deer, elk, all those wonderful things. And in 1681, King Charles II gave William Penn Pennsylvania. All yours. It's because William Penn's father was an admiral, Admiral Penn. And the king really owed William Penn's father a lot. So he said, tell you what, why don't you take this? And he just didn't do it out of the goodness of his heart. You see, the Quakers were making a lot of noise over in England. England had their own religion, and they had laws against practicing other religions. And William Penn was stirring the pot. He was writing pamphlets and things like that. He was in jail, out of jail, in jail, out of jail. There's one particular event, I'm going to save it for later. Just suffice it to say, the king thought he was getting a good deal by getting William Penn out of the country. So he gave him everything, north of Maryland, south of New York State. Yeah, I know my geography. Other side of the Delaware River, all yours, go. That was in 1681. In 1682, William Penn sat down and wrote what he called the Framework for Government. That framework was based upon religious tolerance. It was based on liberty. It was one of the most libertarian organizations ever put together. Now, since William Penn owned Pennsylvania, it was his, he didn't have taxes. What he did have, though, was he tried to get rent from people, but people didn't want to pay it. You got to remember, the Whiskey Rebellion started here in Pennsylvania. There's a lot of deep-seated disagreement with the idea of government. In fact, before William Penn came over, it was pretty much anarchy here in Pennsylvania. But that's a whole other story. But he put together his framework of government and all basic rights: freedom of religion, freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, all the things that we libertarians know and love. He made some updates to that. A year later, 5 years later, the last update he made was in 1701. And after that, things just cruised along. It wasn't until, well, he passed away, but everything else still continued. I keep wanting to get ahead of myself. There's so much to tell about this. So let me just jump ahead. The first major step was in 1776, obviously. All of a sudden, Pennsylvania is not William Penn's private property under the auspices of the king. It's now an independent nation. Before there was any United States, before the Articles of Confederation, before the Constitution, Pennsylvania was its own country. Of course, they needed a constitution. So one of the most popular, most famous Pennsylvanians sat down and took William Penn's frame of government and he turned it into Pennsylvania Constitution. That was Benjamin Franklin. When you read the Pennsylvania Constitution, and I have copies, I think I have enough for everybody. When you read the Pennsylvania Constitution, Article 1, the Declaration of Rights, 90% of it was written by good old Benjamin Franklin himself. Pretty cool stuff. It stayed that way. That was our first Constitution. There have been 5 since then. Every now and again, they just pass another one. First one after 1776 was 1790. And certain people could not wait for that Constitution to be passed because they were waiting for Benjamin Franklin to die. Benjamin Franklin was not the first governor of Pennsylvania. He was the first president. That's what they called him at the time. And he instituted a unique way for amending the Constitution. If you read the 1776 Constitution, it says in there that there's an organization called the Council of Censors. Does anybody know anything about the Council of Censors? Nobody. Oh man, this is good stuff. The Constitution itself, Ben Franklin's a smart guy. He knows that it's not going to be perfect. Pennsylvania was set up, as I mentioned, William Penn owned it. What William Penn did with his framework of government, he established it as a trust. And the people who were elected were there serving the trust. Trustees, in effect. But when you have a trust, anybody legal know anything about trusts? No. Oh yeah, you got one, a little bit. Trusts have trustees. They're the ones who administer the trust. But the person who sets up the trust, they're the one who has the ultimate power. And that was William Penn. He had the ultimate power. They can walk in at any given moment. It's called a visitor. They can walk in at any moment, look at any of the books, talk to any of the people about anything at all. Well, William Penn had passed on. So what Benjamin Franklin did is he created, as visitors, a council of censors. What they would do is every 7 years, each city and each county would elect 2 people. Any 2 people. And they would come together and spend 1 year and review everything that the legislature did, everything that was done, every law that was passed, every tax that was collected. They would look at everything. They had the power of the visitor of the trust. And if they didn't like something, they could just veto the law, get rid of the law. Hey, it was their trust. Essentially, they owned Pennsylvania. They could compel testimony out of somebody, just like judges today can compel your testimony. They could do all sorts of powers because essentially Pennsylvania was theirs. One of the biggest powers they had, though, if there was something wrong in the Constitution, they and they alone could call a constitutional convention. And only for specific things. For example, if they didn't like the way, I don't know, gays were treated, whatever it is, they could say, all right, we're going to have a constitutional convention and say, what are we going to do about this? Very, very powerful. But what that did, though, is it took all the power out of the hands of the legislature, out of the hands of the governor, out of the hands of the court. The only people who had that authority were the Council of Censors. Every 7 years, for 1 year, it was all bets were off. And it was really cool. And it worked very well. But they hated it. The legislature hated it. The president hated it. Everybody hated it. Benjamin Franklin died in April of 1790. In September of 1790, we had a new constitution. And guess what? No council of censors. Instead, we have two ways of amending the Constitution. One is the standard way. Anybody familiar with how to amend the Constitution? Might as well go through a little bit of that too. How much time do I have?
As long as you want.
Wow, you're going to regret that one. Two ways to amend the Constitution. Number one is, whatever the change is, has to pass through two successive legislatures. Legislation has to vote on it, and it passes. Then an election comes, and they vote on it again, and it passes. And at that point, it goes to the electorate. And the electorate say yes or no. That's the standard way. Way in the back of the Constitution, it has an emergency way of doing it, where I won't get into all the details on it, but suffice it to say that within a month, the legislature can put it together and pass it off to the electorate, and they say yes or no. It's never been done. Almost did it back in 2001, property tax crisis, if anybody remembers back then. But there's two ways of doing it. So we were in 1776, an independent nation with our own constitution. 1790, Ben Franklin is gone, they got rid of his council of censors, and things cruised along all the way up to the Civil War. They made a couple of changes with the Constitution then to match up with what was going after the Civil War. Again, nothing really major. And there were two others. The most recent was in 1968. Now, I was 15 in 68. I don't remember them changing the Constitution. And this is in the 60s, when everybody was paying attention to what was going on. I was marching in the streets against Vietnam and things like that. But they changed it again. And it wasn't until recently being the last year or two, that I realized what had been creeping into the constitutions. When you get to the Civil War one, 1876 one, 1870 I guess it was, it starts mentioning this group called the Bar Association. Then with each successive constitution, there's more and more and more. So now, when you read through that, skip Article 5. That's the one about the judiciary. It's written by lawyers, for lawyers, about lawyers, and it gives lawyers sovereign immunity over themselves if they're investigating certain kinds of crimes. But I can go on about attorneys for a long time. Anybody who's listened to my show, my radio show, you know that I don't particularly care for the attorneys. So 1968, we now have the Constitution, the one we know and love, or the one we know, maybe you love it, maybe you don't. And that's where we came from historically. Let me pause there. Any questions about the history of the Constitution? You probably learned more than this is the kind of stuff they should cover in school. And I'll get to that too, because there's a lot about it. All right, that's going to be
I
it.
actually do have a question. If there were only certain ways of changing it back then, how did they get around those certain ways of changing it? Like you said.
Well, while Franklin was still alive, we went through the Council of Censors. After that, then they used the standard way. It gets passed in two successive legislatures.
Okay, so you use the standard way to change it. Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
And it's right there, Article 11. That's not much. This is a pretty fast read if you're looking to do it. But like I said, skip Article 5. If you're brave, go back and take a look at it. This is what Allegheny County does, this is what Philadelphia does, this is what the magisterial courts do. It's filled with legalese. It's a mess. But there's another way around it, and I'll get to that. Article 1 of the Pennsylvania Constitution. It used to be Article 11 or Article 12, something like that. I forget, in the 1776 version. But they moved it all the way up front. It's called the Declaration of Rights. It's like the Bill of Rights, only it's much, much stronger. The Bill of Rights essentially corrals the government, saying there's certain things it can't do. The Declaration of Rights is just that. It's the rights that you have. And this is my opinion why they don't teach this. What I'd like to do is step through pieces of Constitution, hopefully to drive home why they don't like it, and maybe you're going to learn a thing or two, and when you walk out here, you may be a little bit angry. Ready? Article 1, Section 1, right up front. All men are born equally free and independent and have certain inherent and indefeasible rights, among which are those of enjoying and defending life and liberty, of acquiring, possessing, protecting property reputation, and pursuing their own happiness. Sounds like the Libertarian Party. Your life, your way, as long as you respect the rights and property of others. I've never seen a more succinct version in any political document of what the libertarian philosophy is. Your life, your way. Except, of course, if you like to smoke cannabis. Except, of course, if you like to gamble. Or maybe you're a sex worker. Or what, gay marriage. Or so many things. Maybe you don't want to wear a mask. Excuse me, Article 1, Section 1 says, I can enjoy and defend my life and property. What if my property is a gambling hall? What if my property is a bar where I want to let people smoke? In Philadelphia, you don't let them smoke in bars anymore. What happened to Article 1, Section 1? I don't know. Section 2. Article 1, Section 2. All power is inherent in the people, and all free governments are founded on their authority and instituted for their peace, safety, and happiness. For the advancement of these ends, they have at all times an inalienable and indefeasible right to alter, reform, or abolish their government in what manner they think proper.
That's why they don't teach it.
That's why they don't teach it. We've got the right of revolution here in Pennsylvania. Alter, reform, or abolish. And it's not just that. It says the people. All power is inherent in the people. If you go to the legislature and say, hey, I'd like to put this on a referendum. We don't have initiative referendum here in Pennsylvania. Wait a minute. It says it right there, Article 1, Section 2. Oh, no. If you want the legislature, we'll do that. We'll decide whether or not something's going to go on the ballot. It's not what your Constitution says. You know, I'm going to pause here because I should have started with Section 25. Because Section 25 is probably the big zinger. It says, quote, to guard against transgression of the high powers which we have delegated, we declare that everything in this article is accepted out of the general powers of government and shall forever remain inviolate. That means they can't change this. They can't take these away from you. So when they're saying you can't smoke cigarettes in your bar, they can't do that. When they say you can't have initiative and referendum, they can't do that. These powers are forever remaining inviolate. This is why they don't want you to know this. They don't want you to know that they're not allowed to do these things. And there are just so many more of them. Have I just stepped through these other ones? Section 3. No man can be compelled to attend, erect, or support any place of worship, or to maintain any ministry against his consent. No human authority can, in any case whatever, control or interfere with the right of conscience. Unless you don't want to get a vaccination. Unless you don't like gay marriage and you don't want to perform one in your church. Unless you don't want to bake a cake for their wedding. Sorry. The Constitution says you're allowed to say, I don't want to bake a cake. But they took that away from you. Plain as English there. You know? No human authority can, in any case whatsoever, control or interfere with the right of conscience. Think of some of the things that would weigh on your conscience if the government's asked you to do, has ordered you to do. Article 1, Section 25 says, shall forever remain inviolate. I guess forever came today, right? That's an old Supreme song, right? Not forever came today. Nobody remembers these things. So I keep going. We're only warming up here. Article 1, Section 5. This one is near and dear to my heart. Elections shall be free and equal. Except for third-party or independent candidates. When I ran for governor in 2002, Ed Rendell needed 2,000 signatures. Mike Fisher needed 2,000 signatures. I needed 21,027. Why? Because they said so. They don't like the competition. So they're trying to keep us down, even though the Constitution says all elections shall be free and equal. I guess some people are more equal than others, to quote, what's that, 1984? Animal Farm, yeah. You know, I made a federal case out of that. In 2006, I was going to run for U.S. Senate as a Libertarian. It's a formula that determines that number of signatures, and it changes year to year. It's based upon how many people voted in the previous election. Well, in 2004, the previous election, Bob Casey, one of the most popular U.S. Senate candidates, received huge number of votes. I forget what it was, just 3 million plus votes. Well, the formula says the number of signatures we have to get is 2% of the highest vote getter. Do the math. I would need 67,000 signatures to get my name on the ballot. 67,000, and they only needs 2,000? And the Constitution says equal and shall remain forever inviolate? Took it to court, federal court. Pennsylvania court already ruled the numbers were okay. Went to federal court, judge says, yeah, I think that's equal. Appealed it to the district court. Yeah, that's equal. All the way to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court's like, yeah, they're right. When they say it's equal, they're right. Let's go to standing. 67,000. Fortunately, in 2016, I was one of the plaintiffs on a case, and we won. The judge says, you're right, it's not equal. So why don't we change that and make it 5,000? Wait a minute, he needs 2,000, why was this 5,000? Shut up, you're ahead of the game. Okay, shut up. So when you're getting on the ballot, you only need 5,000 signatures. Made life a lot easier.
Thank you, Ken.
You're welcome. It wasn't just me. It was also the Green Party, the Constitution Party.
But they're not here.
All right, you're
I'll
welcome.
thank them when I see
You're
them.
welcome.
I got to meet the guy from the Green Party that helped with that when I was up
Carl
there.
Umanelli?
Sounds familiar. I met him briefly with up the Catfest thing.
Yep. Yeah, he was there. I got him
I
up there
got to
too.
shake his hand.
It was funny because Carl turned in 98,500 signatures. It's the most that anybody's ever turned in. Penn did 78,000 back in 1994. But he blew it all away. They dragged him into court, eliminated some of his signatures for stupid reasons. People would sign where they should print where they should sign, use ditto marks or the wrong colored ink, where they moved. Stupid reasons. Got him down below that 67,000 number, and then fined him $80,000 for having the temerity to run for governor. Or Senate he was running for. And he's just a guy from Reading, retired railroad guy. Free and equal. And even when you go to the judge, yeah, that's fine. And that's still hanging over his head today, that debt.
Excuse me. So what was the rationale of the courts? Because obviously it seems pretty cut and dry.
It does.
But what's the rationale of the courts in upholding it?
Ballot clutter. They say the state has an interest in preventing ballot clutter. Now this is the same time that we had just done the Iraqi thing, and when Iraq had their first elections, they had over 100 people on the ballot. Oh, that's ballot clutter. Well, why are we letting them do that? Jersey doesn't have any such laws. They have 20, 30 people running for governor. They have like the beer party, all these little parties. What's so special about Pennsylvania? But that was it. Ballot clutter.
Where did 2% of the highest vote getter come from?
Actually, that came from nowhere. It used to be a different setup where there's a certain number of signatures. I don't recall exactly what it was. But what would happen is somebody would get that, and now they would become a political party. It was a Socialist Democrat Party or something like that. But they didn't have enough people in their party, because when you sign petitions, you got to be inside the party. They didn't have enough people in their party to sign the petitions, so they would become a political party, and then as such, they couldn't nominate anybody. And then of course now they weren't a political party, so they could do it again. They could use regular signatures, so they get on and off and on and off, on and off. And they sued. They said, this is ridiculous. And the judge says, you're right. And she just made it up herself. And she said, let's say 2% of the largest vote getter in the prior election. And she ruled from the bench. And then they codified it into law. And it's still there today. But that 5,000 number, that's not in the law. One thing, if you're going to ever look at the law yourself, reading the statutes, you got to be careful, because court cases change statutes. So it still says 2% in the law, but we know it's 5,000 signatures. Anyway,
It's not convoluted. Is that like a PA thing, or is that
No.
is that just how our country works?
It's how the attorneys have made the country work.
Oh, kind of like Intuit makes sure you have to use their tax program.
Yeah. And that's something else I'm going to come to later on. They have a monopoly, an enforced monopoly. It's in here, where if you practice law, they're going to throw your butt in jail. They're going to fine you. How dare you practice law? It's amazing. I've had a couple of attorneys on my radio show. And one guy afterward, he goes, why do I feel beat up? Dude, because you charge $500 an hour. The court's away from us. Which is the next one. Section 6. Trial by jury shall be as heretofore, and the right thereof remain inviolate. Well, they've been taking away jury trials one after the other. But there's one main thing that William Penn gave us that they don't want you to know. Who's heard of jury nullification? I'm in the right room. Boy, oh boy. What that means is that the jury has the power to say not guilty, even if the guy guilty is all hell, because the law is bad. This was done in the Civil War. Anytime somebody was caught helping a fugitive slave, not guilty. Yeah, but we caught him in his house here, we got pictures, we got witnesses. Not guilty, because they felt slavery was bad. We, the people, sitting on the jury, we control what the law is, not the judge. The judge is supposed to tell you all these things, but the judge gives his instructions at the end. Never tells you you can try the law as well as the facts. William gave that to us. As I mentioned in the beginning, he was always in and out of prison. One thing he got arrested for was preaching in the streets. He was not preaching the official English church. He was preaching regular stuff. They locked him up. Brought him into court, and they tried to have him convicted. But the jury is sitting there, it's like, this is ridiculous. Why are they trying to do this to William Penn? I said, not guilty. The king's like, what do you mean not guilty? Not guilty. The king took the jury and locked him up in the Tower of London and said, you're going to stay there on bread and water until you guys come back with a guilty verdict. Well, a couple months go by, and they're like, nope, ain't going to do it. Ain't going to do it. People in the streets started rioting and everything, say, hey, you got to do this. The king finally relented. And that became the basis of jury nullification. Direct gift from William Penn down to us. Trial by jury shall be as heretofore. Everybody knew it back then. Those words kind of hide what's behind it. Forever remain inviolate, right? All right, let me move on. Section 7. The printing press shall be free to every person who may undertake to examine the proceedings of the legislature or any branch of government, and no law shall ever be made to restrain the right thereof. Every citizen may freely speak, write, and print on any subject, being responsible for the abuse of that liberty. Except if you want to advertise cigarettes on television. If you want to advertise whiskey on television. If you're any real estate people, there are certain words you can't use when you're advertising a new house. You can't say quiet neighborhood. You can't say in-law suite. There's all sorts of rules and regulations. They took that away from you, even though you're allowed to do that. And there's the last sentence here. In all indictments for libel, the jury shall have the right to determine the law and the facts. Again, jury nullification. It's right there in plain English in the Constitution. And when I read this, all I can think of is somebody ought to tell Edward Snowden you should live in Pennsylvania. But they take away his rights too. Yes, sir?
When it's talking about the jury can interpret the law and the facts, can they interpret it in the opposite direction? So like,
Oh yeah, they can say guilty even if the guy's innocent.
yeah. So it's double-edged.
It is. I don't know of any cases where that's happened, pardon the pun. And in fact, that did happen in my novel, Atlas Snow. That happens in there, where somebody stacks the jury.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing about the jury. That's another thing they do. They stack the jury right in front of your eyes. They say, oh, we call it voir dire. Come on in. Let's see. Do you know the defendant? You're no good. Get rid of him. You had a crime in your family? You're no good. They're stacking the jury right there in front of your eyes. They're not allowed to do that. If I did that, I'd be thrown in jail. These guys, they're attorneys. They work things around. They're all through Article 5 in here. I'll be here all night if I don't go faster. Section 8. The people shall be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and possessions from unreasonable searches and seizures. Except no-knock warrants are still legal here in Pennsylvania. Well, not illegal, but they do them. In Philadelphia, they do stop and frisk. Let's walk up, excuse me. Go. Only the TSA can do that. No, wait, TSA can't do that either. Well, they're federal, that's another story. We're not here to talk about the federal Constitution. DUI checkpoints. Pull over, buddy. You been drinking? And that's another story there, too. I've worked a DUI checkpoint. I graduated from the Abington Citizens Police Academy, and I've worked DUI checkpoints. The first night I did that, 8 people were hauled away in irons, and not one of them was drunk. And why are they bothering people? It says here you should be secure in your car, your house, your papers, all those things. Shall forever remain inviolate, right? Keep repeating those words. Asset forfeiture. There's another one. If you, let's say you loan your car to your teenage son or daughter, and she's driving around, and one of her friends accidentally drops a joint in the back seat. Next day, poor Russ is driving to work. Cop pulls him over, maybe he ran a red light or something like that. Cop sees the joint in the back seat. He can seize his car on the spot, take it away, take his house, his life savings, everything, gone. It's called asset forfeiture. I call it highway robbery. But that's still on the books today. There's a story, like I said, I'll be here all night. Shorty's bar up in Allentown. They were doing drugs in his bar. Shorty didn't like it. He went to the cops. These guys are doing drugs. They seized Shorty's bar, saying, well, you knew there was drugs in your bar. Anyway, I'll be all night. Number 9. This is still Article 1, Section 9, inviolate stuff. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall have the right to be heard by himself and his counsel, to demand the nature and cause of the accusations against him, and to meet witnesses face to face. He cannot be compelled to give evidence against himself. And I'll skip the rest of it, but that's it. What about these red light cameras? Who am I going to meet face to face? Who am I going to talk to? Speed cameras, same sorts of things. The DUI checkpoints. How about even a driver's license for that matter? You know? You don't have a license. What was I doing wrong? You don't have a license. Well, why is that wrong? I actually want to do that someday, if I have the time. If a cop pulls me over and says, yeah, can I see your driver's license and owner's card? I'll just say, if I had such things, can you use them against me? Well, the answer is yes. I don't have to provide them, do I? But if you do the Constitution, if you quote the Constitution, they're like, back up, comfort, back up. We got another one of these guys. Jumping ahead. Section 13. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel punishment inflicted. Except for those $500 an hour lawyers, they've taken the court system away from you. It's all gobbledygook. Anybody ever go to court? No, it's just about everybody. Did you do it yourself, or did you hire one of these high-priced guys? You did it yourself? How did you understand this?
It was small claims court, so it was the local judge.
DJ, yeah.
Yeah, so I just explained my side of the story, the other guy explained his side of the story.
Now I'm thinking of going up the chain. Common pleas, superior.
I didn't have to.
Supreme Court.
I won right the first level.
You're lucky. Anybody done anything heavy?
I took a plea deal, and the judge told me, like, he was reading over the sentence, and I'm like, that's not what I agreed to. And then he looked at my lawyer and said, because the lawyer didn't even understand what was going on. So it was like, that stopped. But the lawyer was confused even. It was so confusing.
My advice is, learn the law. It's not that difficult. It can't be that difficult, or else lawyers wouldn't be able to do it. You can ask my wife, if I get a ticket, I'm like, oh boy, I get to do something. I get to learn more about the court system. I've had several victories. I had several losses too. Sometimes the judge's like, I don't care. You don't shut up. I'm going to just rule against you. Quote unquote. I had another judge. There's a speeding ticket. This is the Superior Court. He says, you know, I got a gun under the bench here. What if I just pulled it out and shot you? Honest to God, judge said that to me. Philadelphia court. Oh, man. Now, is that cruel punishment inflicted? That, they got their monopoly on the practice of law. You got to use theirs. They say, are you here pro se? No, Your Honor. Oh, you have an attorney? No, Your Honor. I'm here pro per, in propria persona. I'm here in my proper person. I don't have the standard instead of an attorney. I don't have an attorney. I have nothing to do with attorneys. Because if you're pro se, lawyer rules apply to you, and the judge has control over lawyers. You want to be there pro per, in propria persona, in your proper person. That's another story too, especially if you're challenging constitutionality of the law, which I've done. And I'll get to that one too, because that's a little further down. That was a good one. Anyway, excessive bail, excessive fines, damn lawyers, and jump down. Article 1, Section 21. I bet you guys know this. Repeat after me. The right of the citizens to bear arms in defense of themselves and the state shall not be questioned.
Hoorah!
Does anybody question what that means?
But I had to get permission.
Yes.
Right. What's this about carry permits, right? During the governor race in 2002, Ed Rendell, he had this idea to limit gun purchases to a month. 2 guns a month. Nobody needs more than 2 guns a month. Well, on stage, in the third debate, nationally broadcast, we got, each of the candidates got to ask 2 questions of our opponents. It was really cool. And I said, Ed, Article 1, Section 21 of the Constitution says the right to bear arms shall not be questioned. But you have a plan where you want to limit gun purchases to 2 a month. I want to know, who are you going to betray? Your buddies in the anti-gun lobby, or your oath to the Constitution? It smiled at the camera and said, I think we could have reasonable limitations on gun ownership. Right there, he said out on TV that he's not qualified to be governor of Pennsylvania. He's not following the Constitution. I can go on about that one, as if I haven't already, right? Let's keep going. All right, Section 25 I already mentioned. All these things that I've just been talking about for the last 10 to 15 minutes, all of that is taken out of the power of government forever. But it's not. You just ignore it, because it's not being taught in schools. Nobody knows it. If I didn't get taught, I was in grade school, what, late 50s, early 60s? I didn't get any of that. I was in high school, later 60s, college, in the early 70s. Nobody taught this. Nobody. I didn't even know we had a constitution. I was in my 30s. Eye-opener when it happened. There were more zingers toward the back as you get further and further into it. They're not breaking all the rules, just a lot of them. Maybe we should keep score. Article 2, Section 8. This is about the legislature. Quote, the members of the General Assembly shall receive such salary and mileage for regular and special sessions as shall be fixed by law, and no other compensation whatever. No other compensation, whatever. But your state reps have a local office. They have an office in Harrisburg. That's being paid for. They don't get mileage. They get a car. It doesn't say you should get a car. They have pensions. Where's this pension stuff? They get walking around money that they're handing out. Where's all this come from? No other compensation, whatever. How can they do this? Well, the judge said, yeah, it's okay. They can do that. Mileage, a car, well, that's really part of the same thing. A pension, a salary, that's really a salary package. And they just stretch it and stretch it and stretch it. It gets so thin you can see right through it. So you can see right through the stuff that they're doing now. What else do we have? Here's another one. Oh, where's Roy? Roy should be here. He would love this one. Section 16, Article 2, Section 16. Commonwealth shall be divided into 50 senatorial and 203 representative districts, which shall be composed of compact and contiguous territory as nearly equal in population as possible. Has Roy told you how he plans to divide up the state?
Yes.
What he does is he draws a line, shortest line across Pennsylvania to make things equal on either side, population-wise. They do the same thing again. They do the same thing again, down and down and down. Just all mathematical, all straightforward. But they don't do that. What they do instead, they play games. They gerrymander. And I don't know if you've been paying attention to the last couple, this one and the last census. The legislature didn't do it at all. The judges did it. The judges aren't allowed to do this. This is the legislature does it. This is all under the section about the legislature. So the judges who are supposed to uphold this document are the ones who are breaking it. The irony of it all. Can't tell you. jump to Article 3 now, which is about legislation. This one is good because, anybody remember PA Clean Sweep, the midnight pay raise? A couple of you did. Article 3, Section 4. Every bill shall be considered on 3 different days in each house. There's support beyond that, but that's the key thing. What they did in 2005, in the middle of the night, they passed a pay raise for themselves, for the senators, the representatives, the judges, the governor, everybody. Middle of the night. Excuse me, what happened to consider 3 different days? Oh, that's not 5, this is important. And they passed it. It was a huge uprising in Pennsylvania. I've never seen anything like that in Pennsylvania before or since. An organization sprang up out of nowhere called PA Clean Sweep. And they said, we're going to sweep away all these. Fortunately, in Pennsylvania, we can elect judges. And Supreme Court justices were up that year. Well, PA Clean Sweep grew and grew and grew. And it got to the point where they unseated a sitting Supreme Court justice, almost got rid of the second one. And the only reason why she stayed is because she was a woman. And women tend to get more votes, all things equal. She just barely snuck by that skin of her teeth. A whole bunch of legislators got kicked out. New guys came in, people that were PA Clean Sweep trained. I was part of that organization, very proud of some of the stuff that we did there. But the legislature got the message. They repealed those pay raises. But they did it in the middle of the night with no 3 days of notice. It's like, dude, don't you learn? Ah, man. And people ask me why I'm involved in politics. How can I not be involved in politics? Look what they're doing to us. Okay, moving on. Here's another one. This is a story I warned you I was going to tell you about before. Still in Article 3, Section 10. All bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives. Identical language in the federal Constitution, by the way. Except we have something in Pennsylvania, Act 511 of 1965, called the Local Tax Enabling Act. That's the one that does the school board income taxes, that 1% local income tax. It's those nuisance taxes, the mercantile taxes, the business taxes, all those things, all part of Act 511. My corporation, this was in late 90s, they came after me and said, Ken, you're not paying your business taxes. I was like, yeah, I don't have to. No. They dragged me into court. And I just stood up there and said, Your Honor, I have here a copy of Act 511 of 1965. And if you look right up front, it says SB 400, as in Senate Bill 400. This did not originate in the House of Representatives. It's got no power. And the judge says, did you notify the Attorney General? I did, because I play around in the courts. Anytime you challenge the constitutionality of a law, you have to tell the Attorney General first. Well, went back and forth a little bit, and Township of Abington had 30 days to respond to what I had put out there. 30 days came and went, and they didn't reply. I said, damn it, I won! I wanted to overturn that bad law. It's unconstitutional. And I did something. I told this to attorneys, and they laughed out loud. I appealed my win. I got a nasty letter from the judge, all in legalese, saying, you can't appeal a win? Like, damn it. You know, come on, come at me again. But you can't come at me again, that's double jeopardy. But if anybody else gets hit with any of the local laws, local tax enabling act, any of those stupid little nuisance laws, Act 511 of 1965 is a Senate bill. It's unconstitutional. Easy to get around. And I'm still not paying tax. I'm on good terms with the Abington tax collector, good buddies. I see them back from time to time. Hey, how's your money? All right, moving down. Here's another one that jumps on you. Probably hits the heart of why I'm here tonight. Article 3, still, Section 14. The General Assembly shall provide for the maintenance and support of a thorough and efficient system of public education to serve the needs of the Commonwealth. Yeah, right. Thorough and efficient? Why aren't they teaching the Pennsylvania Constitution? How thorough is that? How efficient is that? But it says here, to serve the needs of the Commonwealth. You know what their needs are. They don't want you to know. Cut your break. And the second one about schools. No money raised for the support of the public schools of the Commonwealth shall be appropriated or to be used for the support of any sectarian school. except for parochial school buses, parochial school books, teacher certification, all these different rules, all these things using taxpayer money to support sectarian schools, contrary to Article 3, Section 15. I've only got a couple more. Hope your blood pressure's doing okay. Let's jump up to, we'll just jump up to Article 7, Section 9, same thing as before, fixing election districts. Townships and wards of cities or boroughs shall form or be divided into election districts of compact and contiguous territory, and the boundaries fixed and changed in such a manner as may be provided by law. Except, of course, for gerrymandering. I know which Roy was here, he could probably tell us a lot more about that.
So which one was that again, trying to follow?
Article 7, Section 9.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Crazy stuff. All right, moving down to the next one. I still got these things bookmarked. Oh, man. Article 8, Section 11. All proceeds from gasoline and other motor fuel excise taxes, motor vehicle registration fees, and license tax, operator license fees, and other excise taxes shall be used solely for the construction, reconstruction, maintenance, and repair of and safety on public highways and bridges and air navigation facilities and costs related thereto.
My road.
My roads. But solely. What's your bus here? Is this Lerda, Atlanta? What are your local buses here? We got SEPTA in southeastern Pennsylvania. I think Allentown is Atlanta. All these public,
Red roads.
all this, they're paid for out, oh wait, Red Roads, paid for out of gas tax. What the heck? It doesn't say that, it's for building roads. And they say Pennsylvania roads are the worst? I don't know why. I go about the Pennsylvania Turnpike too. Pennsylvania Turnpike tolls are supposed to be used exclusively. It's not in the Constitution, it's in the law. It's supposed to be used exclusively to keep the maintenance of the turnpike. Well, PennDOT reaches in and takes about $500 million every year. That's not about the Constitution, that's just a separate thing. Oh, and I only got one more bookmarked here. So we can let your blood pressure go down. Oh man, this is a good one. Article 9, Section 9. The General Assembly shall not authorize any municipality or incorporated district to become a stockholder in any company, association, or corporation, or to obtain money or appropriate money for or to loan credit to any corporation, association, institution, or individual. I don't know if anybody knows, but there's a pension crisis going on in the school, with the school teachers right now. That started back around 2000, 2001. There was a big crash in the stock market. Turns out the teachers had a lot of their pension money put into the stock market. And all of a sudden they lost money. Like, oh, what are we going to do? Well, let's hit the taxpayers up for it. Let's get money from the taxpayers. It was a big deal when I was running for governor back then. Back and forth on it. On the face of it, it sounds okay. And I went into a lawyer and I said, listen, it says here, Article 9, Section 9, no incorporated district, that includes school districts, right? So yeah, that's right. So it says they can't become a stockholder. What are they doing with their pension money in the stock market? They can't do that. He goes, oh, it's okay, because pensions are private. Their pensions are private. Okay, I'll give you that. But if they're private, why are the taxpayers on the hook for it? You can't have it both ways. Either it's part of the government, they can't do it, or it's not part of the government, and it's not our problem. Now, I would go, when I was running for governor, I said, let's go the second way. Let's say, all right, it's private, but there are problems here, Who would like to donate to help their teachers' pension fund? Let me ask you, do you help your teachers? Some of your favorite teachers? I'm thinking of my math teacher, Father Herron, from Cardinal Dockery High School. Great guy. You're one of the teachers.
I was homeschooled.
Sorry?
I taught myself, I was homeschooled for a
There
period.
you go. Well, you deserve the money too.
It explains a lot.
People would have gladly helped. And this could have been, 20 years ago? We still have a pension crisis today. The numbers keep going up and up. The last one I saw, it's $20-some thousand per person liability. You owe $20,000, right? You're not even 18 yet. See what you got to look forward to? And the only reason that happened is because somebody wasn't following the Constitution. I never changed the Constitution. plan to change. I figured if they can change it, I can change it too. But I changed it along the lines of what's actually going on. And I did this on national television during one of the debates when I ran for governor in 2002. I said to Ed Rendell, I said, I changed the Constitution to allow you to do what you want to do. They can do whatever they like.
Seems that way sometimes.
So there it is. Why aren't they teaching the Constitution? Because they know that you don't, they know that they don't want you to know. I'll get that right. And if you did know, what do you mean? Can you shut up the question? What do you mean? Doesn't that mean we already have constitutional carry here in Pennsylvania? These laws are bad. Why are we on the hook for the pension? Why does he have a car? Why do I have to get 70,000 signatures? Russian question?
No, just thinking.
Thinking, yeah. Well, the next question is, if those who listen to my radio show, I always say the same thing. We're big on solutions. So what do? What can we do? You can do what I do. You hold their feet to the fire every time they do something like that. You watch them. When you hear one of these things going down, you just stand up and say, who do you think you are? Do you know what it says right here? You tell me why the right to bear arms. Shut up.
I know when I do that.
Oh man, you could ask my wife about this. There's some politicians, they hear about it, they go, oh my.
You high-fived me the other day.
Say again.
Oh.
And you know, it's really cool, and I will say this, even though this is being live streamed. Josh Shapiro was my state rep, many years ago. Back in the days when it was 67,000 signatures, we had a bill we put together called the Voters' Choice Act. What it did is it made things equal. Hey, surprise! We approached Josh, said, Josh, here's a copy of the bill. And we sent a copy to every legislator in Harrisburg. We went around personally where we could, stuck in their mailbox when they weren't there. I had an email from Josh Shapiro saying, I support free and equal elections and I support the Voters' Choice Act. We're like, woohoo, Josh is a good guy. We got the bill introduced and it went to the state government committee. Josh is on the state government committee. So when it comes to a vote to say, all right, let's get this Voters' Choice Act out on the floor, you know what he did? He voted against it. He lied to me. Lied in print. I still have the email. And of course, the vote record is still in Harrisburg. And he's running for governor? Oh man. When I heard he was running for governor, I thought, should I run? But Roberto and I talked this over. I'm not running this year. I wish Matt all the luck in the world, because this guy Josh, screwed me over. Don't let him get away with it. As I said earlier, learn the law. If you get a parking ticket, a speeding ticket, go to court. Learn how to do it. You know, the judge may laugh at you or may threaten to shoot you like he did to me, but you're going to learn, and you're going to start winning. Even though, like my case with the tax law, I appealed my win. You're going to learn what you can do, what you can't do. It's not that difficult. Like I said, if it was difficult, lawyers. And don't say no, who am I? Because you got to remember the mantra of the grassroots activist. A lot of you know that I say this all the time. It's easy to remember. 10 words, 2 letters each. If it is to be, it is up to us. Or we want to make it personal, it is up to me. I've made it personal. That's why I've been involved in libertarian politics now for 30 years. Long time. Run for office 10 times. And I'm not going to give up until we save this Commonwealth. Yeah.
Do you mind if the McMaster for Lieutenant Governor campaign steals that?
No, not at all. This is called the folk process. And folk singers do this all the time. Absolutely. And I got a lot of stuff like that.
I don't know you.
By the way, I stole that from Dick Body, who was running for the Libertarian Party presidential nomination in 1996. He had a couple other good statements too. There's one that I used at our convention recently. There's a lot of, in the Libertarian Party, yes, that happens, where people are butt heads with each other. Somebody asked him about the crisis du jour that was going on, because there were 2 conventions going on simultaneously. And he stood up there and he said, you just got to keep one thing in mind. The enemy is not in this room. The enemy's out there. They're in Harrisburg. They're in Washington. It's not other libertarians. I don't know if any of you are part of the Cathedral Caucus Junior High. A bunch of children pretending they're in high school. I got a picture of this guy, things like that. Cut me a break. The enemy's not in this room. If they took that same energy and scratch out the names of libertarians they're picking on and put in the names of Democrats, Republicans, and Greens and Constitutions, we might have already reclaimed this country. That kind of infighting is stupid. I can't believe it. And I've seen it before. I've been in this party, as I said, 30 years now. This is now the third time I've seen this happen. And all 3 times, I said at the convention, those who were there, what happens is it resolves itself. And the guys causing the trouble leave in a huff. This is the first time I saw them go off and form another party. Did you hear about that? Steve and Jen and all those other negatarians. Yeah, we got our own party. Good. This happened about 10 years ago with He Who Shall Not Be Named. He did the same thing they were doing. They would tell things that weren't quite true. They would set up parallel organizations. They would delete party records. And then I saw it again back in, well, anyway. Somebody should write down the history of the party while it's still fresh.
I don't think we want that record.
You got to learn from it. This is now the third time I've seen it happen. And I predicted that they're going to lose and they're going to go away in a huff. They lost and they went away in a huff. You can tell the good guys because when they lose, they say, dude, let's go further. Let's move on further. You're right this time, but let's keep going. These people identify themselves. You don't have to say who's good and bad. Are they complaining about libertarians? Or are they complaining about Harrisburg and Washington? I'll go on a long time about that. So it's up to you guys. If it is to be, it is up to
Us.
Any questions?
Only about 100,000.
Only about 100,000. One thing we're doing on the Pennsylvania Project is we have a petition. Go out there, PennsylvaniaProject.com, that says that you want teachers to teach the Constitution to our kids. Sign it. We send it off periodically to the school districts, to the governor, all those people. The unelected Board of Education. Board of Education. They must be. Anything else? Or I can shut up now.
No questions for Ken?
Thank you, Ken.
All right.
Yeah.
And by the way, I used to get asthma attacks by speaking in public on national television more times than I can count. The way that I did this is through Toastmasters. How many Toastmasters in the room? There you go. The mission of Toastmasters is to provide a supportive environment for learning communication and leadership skills. You learn how to answer questions with no previous thought. You learn how to structure your response. You learn how to be a leader, how to run meetings, how to motivate volunteers. I could not do any of this stuff that I'm doing now without Toastmasters. Probably almost as important as the Constitution is you guys should join Toastmasters. Especially if you're going to be out there. You get the best message on the planet, but it's useless if you can't communicate it. And that's what Toastmasters is all about. And with that, I think I'm going to stop. Thank you again. Thanks for inviting me. Oh, and I have a bunch of constitutions up there.